Hi everybody, it's me, ya girl, here to talk about that Sonic the Hedgehog movie that came out recently. Yeah. So this is gonna be a little bit different. It's just, it's like a little rambly quickie, so I don't actually have a script as much as I just have a list of bullet points that I want to go over that I'm gonna talk about. So hopefully you don't mind the more informal setup. Also, I apologize that my newest big video isn't quite out yet. I've started working on it, but I am very sick this week. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell from my voice, but my throat hurts like a bitch. And it's just not very fun. That's kind of probably why I'm just doing this low-effort thing first, too, just so that I can have a little something out. So apologies, too, if I don't sound as full of energy as I usually do. Anyway, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the first trailer, I thought this movie was gonna be absolutely terrible. And if you actually go back on my channel, my first reaction video to the whole thing, when only the first trailer was out, I said that I thought this movie was gonna be pretty bad. And honestly, that original design, I mean, everybody's talked about it at this point, but can you really blame me for thinking at that point that it was gonna be terrible? That being said, the new design, obviously, when that came around, I didn't actually, make a follow-up video about it, because I figured that, what's the point of, making a whole entire video just to say, oh, hey, the design looks better, because, there's not really a whole lot to talk about there, other than the fact that I thought that he looked way better. And he does. He looks way better. He's very cute in this new design, and I think that, in particular, actually helps the movie by, a really long stretch. I think this movie would have been way worse if Sonic wasn't as cute as he is now, because that adds to a lot of the foundation that they're trying to lay out, but I'll get to that more in a minute when I talk about some of the other stuff. So first of all, we're just gonna kind of talk about the plot, little beats for beats. I'm gonna try not to spoil the whole thing. I'm not gonna talk about the post-credits scene. The only thing that I have to say about it was cool, and it made me excited, and I clapped. So there's your reaction to that, if you were wondering. But for the most part, I'm just going to go over the general beats, and I'm going to try not to spoil, a whole bunch of stuff, because even though this movie's plot is very formulaic, and a lot of what happens is basically what you'd expect, there's still a lot of, fun little things here and there that I don't want to spoil for everybody who wants to go see the movie. That being said, we start off with Baby Sonic. We actually learned about this bit pretty recently. That was, one of the last things kind of revealed about the movie. I mean, I say the last things. It was, within the last couple of months before the movie came out, but we didn't know about this until, fairly recently. And it was, I was a little bit skeptical of the concept at first when I heard about it, I will admit, but it was cute, and it only lasts, the first couple of minutes of the movie during, this little flashback scene where, Baby Sonic basically lived in his own world, and he was raised by this owl named Longclaw. She definitely looks like, the design of this owl character looked like, kind of a holdover from the previous design sensibilities, but because she was an original character, I didn't really mind as much. She didn't look bad or anything like original Sonic did, so, she was fine as far as I was concerned. You don't really, get to learn that much about her, though, because, and this isn't really a spoiler, because it happens within, the first 5 minutes of the movie. She dies. She just gets murdered. It's more of a setup thing, but, it's there's not really much to go on with her, so I don't really have much of an opinion about her. She was fine. One interesting thing that I thought was kind of neat, maybe another bit of, sort of a sequel hook type thing, that they could go into with a later film, is that Sonic was being chased for his powers all over, wherever he went, or whatever. But the first kind of group of people that was chasing after his powers there in that flashback scene was a group of what looked like the Knuckles clan from, I mean, they basically looked like echidnas, but the way that they were dressed in sort of the garments and the face masks and stuff really reminded me a lot of the Knuckles clan and the Echidna tribe from, say, Sonic Adventure. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if they're going to go anywhere with that, if they actually do make a sequel, which, considering that this is the best performing movie about a video game series on an opening weekend ever, or something like that, I anticipate that they probably will make another movie. And I'm fine with that. But anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. So then we flash forward to, you know, Sonic's been living in Green Hills, Montana, and Green Hills, get in, because it's the Green Hill Zone. He's been living there for a while. He's gotten to know basically everybody in town just by kind of watching them, you know. So he feels like he's kind of got like this sense of community with these people, but he also doesn't actually feel like he has any friends or anything, because he's like sort of just ostracized from them because he's always hiding out. I thought this was kind of an interesting angle to bring to Sonic's character, because let me go ahead and say right off the bat that Sonic in this movie, you know, he does seem to fit Sonic's personality as I know the character, and have known the character since, you know, I first got into the series when I was tiny. I would say that he's a little bit more juvenile. Really, he's just a bit more childish in general, but I, like, with kind of the tone that they're going for, I get it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I would like to see some natural progression or maturity coming into his character if, you know, again, more sequels are made, but I think there's still plenty of time for that. But anyway, because in all of the Sonic games, like, Sonic usually just already has, like, all these friends that he, you know, works with and talks to all the time, it was kind of interesting to see a Sonic who doesn't really have any friends. At least not yet. And to see kind of how loneliness affects him. Sonic here is a much more emotionally vulnerable character than I've seen him in a lot of recent things, and that I'm actually a big fan of. I really do like that, because honestly, I just don't think that Sega offers enough emotional vulnerability for Sonic to have in a lot of things nowadays. I really wish that he was given the opportunity to be a little bit more open like that, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that you could do with Sonic in that manner. I'm not saying that I want him to, like, bawl his eyes out on screen all the time or anything, but I just think, you know, you could do more interesting stuff by letting Sonic be more than just, you know, the guy that cracks jokes all the time. Oh god, especially with Pontiac's writing, but don't get me started on that. Anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of cool. Then we get introduced to the two main sort of human characters in the movie, Tom Wachowski, the police officer, and his fiancée, wife. I forget if they're actually married yet or not. I think they might be, because, you know, Maddie's sister keeps on telling her to divorce Tom. I don't really know why. That was another weird thing, actually, that, like, the sister character keeps on telling Maddie to divorce Tom, like, over and over and over again. I know that it's, like, supposed to be kind of like a joke. It's, like, a funny thing, like, haha, she doesn't like, you know, her sister's boyfriend or whatever, but, like, as far as I can tell, there's not actually, like, a reason why she doesn't like him. She just doesn't. It's a little odd, but it's not really that big of a deal. Anyway, Tom, he's inoffensive. James Marsden pretty much just plays the role that he always plays in these types of movies here, and he does a good enough job with it. I didn't really dislike Tom, though. I think Tom is at least a little bit of a step up for me in terms of human characters who pal around with the CGI characters in a kid's movie like this, because a lot of the time, I just feel like they're completely pointless. Like, I don't like them at all. Because they're just super tacked on, and their character arcs have absolutely no relevance to what's going on with the characters that I actually do want to see. So it just feels like I'm, like, slogging through a bunch of crap that I don't care about to get to the stuff that I do care about. In this movie, there's not really a whole lot of that. The pace is pretty even, and all the stuff with Tom thematically kind of gets looped around into Sonic's thing, which makes sense because one of the big focuses throughout the plot is their developing friendship. So I thought that was pretty cool. Sonic, though, Sonic said fuck cops, though. No, I'm kidding, even though Tom should get a better job. Maddie was pretty good too. I wouldn't say that she was like amazing, but then again, she doesn't really get that much screen time or like plot significance either, so it's not like she was a bad character or anything. I liked her in like the couple of scenes she was in. Thought she was funny sometimes. Tom was pretty funny too. You know, they had some good chemistry together. Him and Sonic did. Especially comedically. There was like a couple of jokes here and there that didn't really land that well. Like there was a fart joke and I was like, oh yep, that's a kid's movie for you. But there were a lot of good jokes too. There were way less jokes than I expected would like make me cringe back into myself, and that I am very grateful for. There were a lot of jokes that actually kind of jived with my sense of humor, so I was glad for that. Geez, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry, I keep, like, going off topic when I'm talking about something else. Anyway, so after we meet Tom and Maddie, we get this scene where Sonic is playing baseball with himself, and then he realizes how lonely he is, and he starts running around in circles, like, and causes an electromagnetic pulse throughout the entire town. Now, on one hand, I get that this is sort of like the instigating moment of the plot, because this is what makes the government notice Sonic and send in somebody to find out what's going on. I found it a little bit odd, like, not to the point where I wasn't able to go along with it, or where I was like, this doesn't make any sense, because it's like, you know, it's whatever. But I thought it was kind of weird how, like, Sonic has this emotional reaction to the fact that he's alone. So he just starts running around in a bunch of circles. I mean, you know, I guess. I don't really... That was a little bit confusing, but still, I guess they just kind of need an excuse to get Robotnik in there. Speaking of which, right after that, we bring in Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. He is... It's an interesting conundrum, this one, because I'm tempted to say that Robotnik is probably the best part of the movie, but at the same time, he's not really a whole lot like the actual character from the games. Like, if you've played Sonic games, especially the modern Sonic games, this Eggman is nothing like the Eggman that you know from any of the games. Now, to be fair, he does undergo a bit of character transformation throughout the film, so, like, at the very beginning, he's almost nothing like the Robotnik you would expect. He's just kind of Jim Carrey playing an dickish smart guy kind of archetype. But the later it goes on, the more kind of unhinged he gets, until, like, the very end, where he has the whole thing where, like, you know, he's, exiled off after he's defeated, and like he's going really crazy. That starts to resemble the Eggman from the games a lot more. But as far as this movie goes, it's more of a grad type thing. Almost like we're teasing at the possibility of what he's gonna be in the future, more than actively showing the Eggman that we know from the very beginning. Which, I mean, the way that they're framing the plot of the film does make sense, so, you know, I'm fine with that. And honestly, Jim Carrey just absolutely nails it, but we'll talk about the acting more later. We learned that Sonic has these rings that he always uses to, like, go to different worlds if he needs to, like, hide away from people that want to steal his powers. So basically the whole thing is, the way that all of this plot kicks up is that, you know, he's being chased down by Robotnik, who's noticed the electromagnetic pulse. So now he's decided that, like, hey, I actually need to leave this world now, because this is bad news and I'm gonna get caught. Well, he's about to do it at home, but then his home gets raided, so he's like, okay, I have to go somewhere else because it's not safe here. So he ends up sneaking into the, like, shed of this police officer guy, Tom. And he's about to, like, toss one of his rings and go through the portal to escape. And then, basically, like, you know, the Tom thinks that there's, like, some raccoons in the shed or something because he sees, like, the movement and he hears banging around, so he goes to check it out. And Sonic's in there, and it's the scene from the trailer, the, meow, and they both scream, and Tom shoots him with a little anesthetic dart. So when Sonic's falling down after he's been shot with a little dart thingy, he drops his ring and it creates a portal. And because he's looking at Tom's shirt that has, like, a the thing talking about, like, I'm forgetting the actual name of the structure, but it's like a, like a tower in San Francisco or something. Because he's looking at that, he, like, the ring kind of, like, goes to wherever he's imagining, I guess. So, it's like, oh, okay, so it opens up a portal to this tower, and then when Sonic falls over, his bag of rings, like, just drops through the portal as he's fainting onto the tower, and then it closes, and he's like, ah, shit, I need that to get out of here. It's your fault that I'm still here, so now you gotta help me get him back. I remember reading a plot leak, like, a long-ass time ago from the test screening, which at first, the first time I ever read it, I thought it was total bullshit. I was like, there's no way this is real. And then the more footage and, like, teaser trailers and stuff started to come out, I was like, oh my god, it actually lines up, like, kind of really well with what we're seeing. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, yeah, the plot that was in the Reddit leak was, like, that is exactly what the plot of the film was. But, to be fair, a lot of things happen in the context of the actual movie that when I saw it, I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense than when I read it for the first time. Some of the stuff sounded really stupid. The rings is one of those things. I remember reading in the original little Reddit leak test screening synopsis that they said something about, like, Sonic loses his bag of rings, and I was like, the fuck? Well, like, what? Why? That's dumb. That's super dumb. But now I get it. Now I understand what the whole idea with that was, and I'm like, okay. And although I think the power to use rings to warp all the time is a little bit OP, it does kind of have precedent in the games to some extent, where it's like, obviously the special stage ring at the end of Sonic 1, if you got 50 rings in the stage, and made it to the end with them, would, like, open up to bring you to the special stage. So I guess it's kind of like, in theory, it's like little portable warp rings, which is, that's kind of interesting. And it gives him an excuse to, like, move between worlds and stuff, so that could also come in handy later. So I'm kind of fine with that for the most part. So then, of course, since Sonic is stuck, he has to go with James Marsden on this wild road trip to find his rings while also they're being chased by Robotnik. There's a scene where they're, like, being chased on the road, and that was a pretty cool action scene. It's, like, the one that they released a clip of it with the little robot that cuts the hood off the car, and that was a pretty good scene. I enjoyed it for the most part. There was, like, a weird kind of, like, they tried to introduce kind of like a splintering conflict between Sonic and Tom around this point in the movie, where Tom's talking about, like, how he's gonna move to another city after this, and he's gonna stop working in Green Hills, because he wants to be, like, a bigger police officer with the better job opportunities and stuff. And Sonic gets, like, weirdly mad about it. He's like, oh, so you just leave everything behind, huh? You just leave people? You just don't stay where people need you? Because I guess, taking it real personally, because he doesn't really want to leave Earth, but because he's being hunted down, he has to. And he likes it here, so, as far as Sonic is concerned, Green Hills is, like, the greatest place on Earth. But he's never gotten to experience all this stuff before, so he's just really repressed. I don't know, like, I get where they're going with that, like, in terms of Sonic's character emotions, but, like, in terms of an actual, like, message in the film, it's a little weird, because it's like, yeah, never move out of your small town, asshole. Stay there forever. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just shouldn't think that hard about it, but it was a little strange. But, again, it's not really that big of a deal. Then, of course, they have basically, like, the little in-between points where they go to a hotel, they go to a bar, and, like, there's some bikers. There's, like, a big fight scene where Sonic does the Quicksilver freeze frame thing and goes around, like, moving stuff in slow motion while everything's actually going super fast for everybody else. And that scene was, it was pretty cool. It was a little, you know, it was cute. They had a part where he ate some chili dogs too, and I thought that was fun. Again, like I mentioned in the hotel, did I mention it before? I don't remember. In the hotel, they have a bit where yes, I did mention it before, where Sonic farts because it's funny, because it's a kid's movie and kids like laughing at farts, and I thought that was the one moment in the movie where I was like, you disappoint me. But other than that, it was pretty much fine. I do like sort of the little in-between, have a few little good character moments. I thought that was really good. The fact that we kept cutting back to Jim Carrey during all of that, too, was also really, because it was, I think, the fact that we could always see a little bit of momentum between Sonic and Robotnik in their corresponding scenes meant that even when one side of things was starting to slow down a little bit, the pace still felt pretty even, and just seeing Robotnik by himself, not even like having to just constantly interact with Sonic all the time, was just really fun, because I mean, he's just such a fun character to watch that, like, he instantly brings up the mood of the movie, like, at least by a few points, just by virtue of being on screen a lot, and doing, like, fun, goofy things. Especially with so much energy, because it, you know, it just brings a sense of confidence to the film that it wouldn't otherwise have with somebody as strong in character roles as Jim Carrey is. So anyway, after all those in-between scenes, they go to the city, they go to get the rings, Sonic's about to leave, he's like, okay, bye, but then you can see, of course, that he's reluctant to go, but he throws a ring, and it gets bounced back at him, because at the last second, Robotnik's ship comes up, and it deflects off the thing. So now Sonic has to go on this weird citywide chase with Robotnik, who's tailing him and trying to defeat him and stuff. There's this pretty cool sequence where Sonic's throwing a bunch of rings and teleporting to different, like, landmarks in the world. Like, there's a part where he's running along the Great Wall of China. There's a part where he's near a pyramid. There's also a part where it's in the desert where he does, like, a thing to blind Robotnik, where he runs around in circles and causes, like, this sand tornado thing, which kind of reminded me of Sad AM a little bit, and that was kind of cool. I like that. Overall, though, the scene, like, not much actually happens in it, but it's like, you know, it's fun, a spectacle scene. Until finally we teleport back to Green Hills, where Sonic gets pretty banged up, and it looks like he's dead for a little bit. Of course, everybody knows that he's not actually gonna die, because that would be stupid. But there's, like, this whole bit where, you know, he's laying on the ground, and Tom's like, come on, Sonic, get up, and Sonic's just laying there, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of dark for a second. But then, I've said before to other people that this movie felt surprisingly anime, and what I mean by that, like, what I'm referring to when I say that this movie was kind of anime was, like, specifically this scene, because Sonic's laying there and he looks dead, and Robotnik's, like, you know, making a bunch of jokes about his dead body, and also saying stuff like, he didn't belong here! He was, you know, just a weird alien! And then Tom says something like, you know, like, Sonic was my friend, and then, like, the instant he says the word friend, Sonic, like, turns, like, Super Saiyan Blue, and immediately stands up, and, like, turns into a super badass, and I'm laughing, but do not mistake that laughter as me thinking the scene was stupid. I thought it was really cool. I liked the scene. The little confrontation between Sonic and Robotnik there at the end had me grinning like an idiot throughout the whole thing during that scene. I will admit that it was a little bit short, though. I thought that maybe that battle should have been a little bit longer, and there should have been more, like, actual battle going on between them, as opposed to just Sonic, like, booping the robot faster and faster a bunch of times. Would have liked there to be a little bit more of a combat variety there. But for what it was, the scene was still pretty cool. And I enjoyed it. And then so Robotnik's defeated, and he gets knocked into a ring, and, you know, he's exiled. And then we have that scene that I mentioned before with him going crazy, which is fun. And then Sonic lives with Tom and Maddie, which was a little weird. Like, I mean, I get it, and I'm not, like, saying that it's a bad thing. I just thought that it was, like, a little strange because it feels like Sonic has just now become their weird adopted furry child. It's like, you know, I always think of Sonic, like, I know that Sonic is supposed to be, like, kind of a teenager, but for good reason, I would imagine, because he's such a memorable, iconic character. I kind of think of Sonic as, like, this timeless, ageless, sort of, like, Mickey Mouse type character in a way. So seeing, like, Sonic explicitly being doted on by these realistic human people, like, he's just, you know, their baby boy, is, like, a little weird. And, like, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to my room, and it's weird. It's, like, it's just kind of weird. Like, there's just a little bit of a weirdness factor to it. That's all I'm saying. And then, of course, you know, they have this, which I was going to mention too, because everybody talks about it, is the product placement. There's a part where they talk about apartments on Zillow, and they, like, fixate on the computer screen where you see the Zillow site, and I didn't really feel negatively about that, because, to be honest, I had never heard of Zillow before. And then there's 2 mentions of Olive Garden, which a lot of people seem to really hate. They're like, it's sloppy, and it's integrated poorly, and it's stupid and shameless, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I know product placement's kind of annoying, and it feels, like, very corporate and dumb, but you're not gonna get away from it in a especially in a kid's movie like this. Like, it's just, I'm sorry, it's gonna happen. Not that that makes it, like, great or anything, but it's really not that big of a deal, in my opinion. And honestly, in terms of, like, ways to do product placement, I think this was one of the lesser obnoxious roads they could go, because they at least tried to incorporate it into, like, a joke that would come back around. So it made it kind of feel like a part of the dialogue, I guess. Like, the first time they bring it up, Tom's like, oh, I don't know anything about phones. I only have the apps on my phone that came with it. That and the Olive Garden app, because I like Olive Garden. When you're there, they treat you like family, or, you know, something like that. And it's like, it just sounds like he's making, you know, goofy banter with his wife. You know, I can imagine my dad saying something like that to my mom, honestly. And that probably says less good things about my family than you would think, but that's not the point. The point is, I didn't really feel that bothered by it. And then later, at the very end of the movie, the government comes and they're like, well, you know, we're gonna classify this whole thing as never having happened, and also Jim Carrey doesn't exist anymore, and here's something that your country is just giving to you for no particular reason, certainly not related to staying quiet about the weird alien thing that happened. And Tom's like, oh, cool, what am I gonna get? And there's, like, kind of this feeling of, like, oh, they're gonna get, like, a whole bunch of money to buy their dream house. Maybe that one they saw on Zillow. But then it's just, like, an Olive Garden gift card for, like, $25. Can you get, like, that much food at Olive Garden for $25? I feel like they kind of shortchanged him. You could have at least given him, like, a $50 gift card or something. But anyway, it's just an Olive Garden gift card. And they're like, the endless pasta bowl is endless. And it's like, yeah, that one felt a little bit more forced than the previous one. But, like, again, it didn't really bother me. I just thought it was kind of funny. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about the plot. It was fairly predictable, but it was also fun. And it wasn't really that offensive or anything, so I was pretty cool with it. Okay, so now let's talk about the other stuff. The visuals in the movie were pretty good. Like, the cinematography and everything wasn't, like, the best I'd ever seen, but it was, you know, it was serviceable. It was good. The effects were pretty good. The whole, like, Quicksilver bullet time shit with Sonic was pretty cool. Nothing that you've never seen before, but, you know, it was still pretty cool. I was a little bit disappointed that during some of the scenes of, like, Sonic going fast, we never really got, like, any sort of, like, high-speed kind of POV type shots, except for, like, one that lasts very, very short amount of time. Most of the time that we're seeing Sonic go fast, it's either, like, he's off screen. It's like one of those jokes where it's like, you know, hey, don't go over there, and then, like, he's already back. It's like, you know, you see me run over that mountain? You want to see me do it again? You know, that kind of thing.
And so it's either that or it's like the camera is pulled way back. So like you're just kind of seeing like this blue dot and streak like go across like a part of the screen or something. So I kind of wish we had gotten a little bit more of like direct perspective on the speed parts, because I mean it's Sonic the Hedgehog, kind of expect it. But at the same time, it wasn't, again, it didn't like offend me or anything. It was fine. I also, again, you know, thought the CGI was pretty good. Sonic looked pretty great. There were times at which I felt like the CGI seemed just a little bit half-baked, but that's probably just obviously because they didn't have as much time to work on the model and animation as they would have with the older one if they had just never changed the way that it looked. But I'm also glad that they changed the way that it looked because, again, so much of this movie relies on you to connect emotionally and sympathetically with the character of Sonic. It requires you to kind of think that he's cute and, like, needs friends and stuff. So if he was this hideous sex predator in a blue morph suit, like the first one, like, there's no way you would have connected with it at all. Just the new design alone made this movie, like, better by leaps and bounds, honestly. I feel like the movie would have been received way less favorably if he looked the way he did in the first trailer for the entire movie. But you know, the audio was, I'm kind of mixed. First of all, I want to say that the actual soundtrack itself was pretty good. There's not like a whole lot of tracks that I like remember off the top of my head, but as far as film scores go, it was very well done, and the license music that they used was pretty good too. Not any real bad choices I could think of in there. One thing that somebody pointed out that I've now become a little bit more hyper aware of, though, and it does bother me a little bit, but not that much. Like, it's not gonna ruin the movie for me or anything, but now I'm like not able to unhear it, is that if you pay attention to the audio in the movie, it sounds like Sonic is recorded elsewhere from like everybody else all the time. And I mean, that's because he is. Obviously, you know, Ben Schwartz is in a booth doing the VA work for Sonic because he's a CGI character. But like, you'll see James Marsden on the screen talking to Sonic, and he'll like sound a certain way on the boom mic or whatever, and then you'll hear Sonic talk back to him, and they're like standing right next to each other. But Sonic sounds markedly different in terms of like noise environment than James Marsden does, and it's a little bit distracting. Again, not that distracting, because I didn't notice it as much until somebody told me about it, but now that I have been told about it, I do notice it. So that can take you out of it just a little bit, but it's, again, not that big of a deal. It's just kind of sloppy, and, you know, think that they probably should have paid more attention to that. Now let's talk about the acting. Ben Schwartz is Sonic. Honestly, probably one of the better Sonic portrayals I've heard in a really long time. That's helped by the fact that Ben Schwartz is just a really talented voiceover artist. He's a really funny guy, too. If you've never seen any, like, interviews or, like, video clips of Ben Schwartz doing stuff in the promotional material for this movie, he's a really funny person. Like, he's very quick-witted, and he's talented. I just really like Ben. So hearing Ben in the role was very natural for me. He kept the energy of the character very well, while also, you know, he molds very well to the little tweaks that they were doing with movie Sonic in particular. During the parts where Sonic gets kind of sad and sullen, he shifts his tone very well, and I feel like he plays the subtle moments just subtle enough that it's not, like, horribly depressing, but it's also not, like, you know, it fits, is what I'm basically saying. Now, my personal favorite Sonic voice is still Ryan Drummond, but I definitely think that I like Ben a lot more than both Jason Griffith or Roger Craig Smith, especially Roger Craig Smith. No offense to RCS. Roger's great. He's a really good actor. I have always just thought that he sounds too old for Sonic, though. He sounds less like a teenager to me and more kind of like a dickish 30-year-old, but that's just me. I know some people like Roger, but yeah, it's just me. Anyway, but yes, I did really like Ben as Sonic. He did a pretty stand-up job. Can't really find much to complain about with him. Jim Carrey as Robotnik. Obviously, one of the highlights of this film. Good lord, he is just really funny. He has a lot of great energy that he brings to the role. It really does feel like watching Jim Carrey in a 90s movie again. Like, it does not feel like this is just, Jim Carrey, like, way older or something. Like, he really does still feel like he embodies all of that same energy that he had in all the films that we've ever loved seeing him in. And it's just really fun to see him tap into that sort of crazy energy and kind of go ham for once again. And again, like I said, he gets a lot of scenes that are just kind of by himself, and I really appreciated that because, again, it just brings up the energy of the film when you see somebody who's really into what they're doing and you can tell is having fun, just getting to have fun. So again, that definitely added to the experience. And he's very good at, like, balancing kind of the silly humor with the menace. I was kind of concerned before going into this that, I already kind of knew that Jim Carrey wasn't really going to be very Robotnik-y in terms of faithfulness to the game character, but what I was more worried about was that I was worried that he was going to be like the Grinch, basically. Just a little bit too much. But no, he knew how to kind of pull it in when he had to, and he has really, really impeccable comedic timing. All of it just worked very well. I was really happy with Jim Carrey in this movie. He did a lot better of a job than I probably would have expected him to be completely honest. James Marsden as Tom, again, he was fine. I didn't dislike Tom as a character. I'm kind of indifferent to him, but that indifferent doesn't mean I hated him. As far as James's performance, he did a good job. He didn't ever really look to me like when he was looking at Sonic, I didn't have the problem that I have with a lot of these CGI character movies where it looks like they're looking through them. He did pretty well with looking like he was convincingly interacting with Sonic, except for some occasions where the VFX kind of was a little bit weird and it looked like he was carrying a pocket of air with Sonic in the middle of it sometimes, but that was like a little hard to notice, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But yeah, he was just good. Tika Sumpter as Maddie was pretty good too. She had, a lot of nice, sweet, funny energy, and I liked her, but the character wasn't really that important or around for much of the film, so, like, there's only so much I can really say about her. And I guess now I'll just wrap up, because I've been talking about this movie for 40 minutes, and I didn't mean to, and I'm not doing my throat any favors. So let's wrap it up. So yes, Sonic the Hedgehog 2020. What did me, your local Sonic friend, think about that? And I can speak English, I promise. Yeah, really there's not a whole lot of other ways to put it other than I thought that it was a relatively inoffensive, if formulaic film that had a lot of fun moments and charming material that otherwise was pretty by the numbers, safe, and predictable. I wouldn't call it the greatest movie of all time. I wouldn't even really call it an amazing movie either, but I would say that it is a fun movie that is worth watching, especially if you just want to have a fun time with some friends, and especially if you're a Sonic fan. I think you'll get a lot out of it. That being said, if you aren't really that big of a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, or if you're not, at least marginally fond of, like, kids movies, because don't get me wrong, this is a kids movie. Like, it's not thematically deep. There's not a whole lot going on. It's not like, you know, the type of kids movie that you would also think is amazing for adults, like Into the Spider-Verse or the Lego Movie or something like that. It's a very basic kids movie type of affair. So if you're not into that kind of thing, then you're probably not going to find much to enjoy here. And especially if you don't really know that much about Sonic, you probably won't either, unless you're like tangentially interested in getting into Sonic and you're already predisposed to be like somewhat of a fan of the character. Then you might enjoy it. But that's, you know, your mileage may vary. That's just what I think. But yeah, you know, it was a pretty good movie. I didn't expect that. Honestly, I'm more excited for the possibility of the sequels that they may get to make, because then they could expand upon some of the ideas that they clearly seem to have. And I'd be more interested in seeing the continuation of those ideas than seeing this, which was more kind of a setup, it felt like. But on its own, it's a fine movie. And it's definitely not terrible, which is basically a lot more than I could have asked for, frankly. So I'll give the Sonic movie, let's think about it. I'll give it like a good 6.5 out of 10. How's about that? Sound fair? That sounds pretty fair to me. Good 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, because it's not a 6, because it's not quite that low, but I wouldn't place it quite as high as a 7 either. Yeah, 6.5 is fine. Alright, anyway, that's all I had to say about the Sonic movie. I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna be making my big video again still. I'm still scripting for it. I can't perform a script right now, though, so please, I'm sorry, but just give me a little bit longer. I promise I want to work on it as much as you want to see it, but I feel bad. So, yeah. I'll see you all later. Thank you for watching.